race for South Carolina House District 112, which covers Sullivan's Island, the Alpha Palms, and parts of Mount Pleasant, is heating up between Joe Bustos and Daniel Brownstein. Today, I talk one-on-one with Daniel for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Daniel Brownstein, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish we could be there together physically like last time, but I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Obviously, you're a Democratic candidate for South Carolina House District 112, which covers parts of Mount Pleasant and, of course, the Alpha Palms and Sullivan's Island. And I want to just jump into what you posted on your Facebook page on Wednesday. You said this, quote, "Great news out of the South Carolina Supreme Court today. The court ruled that the Governor McMaster's plan to use COVID money for private school vouchers is unconstitutional. But you can be assured a similar plan will be in front of legislators next year. I believe public money should go to public schools, period. My opponent has supported vouchers in the past and is unclear about his stance today." Daniel, let me ask you this. What is the ideal plan right now?
Yeah, so I believe that public money should only be spent for public schools. In South Carolina, we have woefully underfunded our education system for years. Typically, our schools fall towards the bottom of the list nationally, unfortunately. So before we are sending money to subsidize private schools, we need to make sure that we are stepping up and doing everything for our state's public schools, which in my estimation are the manifestation of equal opportunity for all. If we are setting kids up with a quality 21st century education, setting them up for success, we are fulfilling our promise of opportunity for all. We're not doing that if we are diverting money out of that underfunded system and giving it to our state's private schools. So I really am in this race to prioritize our public education. We have great schools in my district, but we have a great disparity throughout the state, and we need to do something about it this next term in the legislature. So you can put me down in the anti-school voucher category, and I'm going to fight like heck to make sure that we do not pass that in this next session.
And let me talk about disparities. What are the disparities in the House District 112?
112 is very diverse. We have great schools, but for instance, at my children's school, Whitesides Elementary, it is on the PTA to raise $150,000 a year. And that covers pretty basic items like reading interventionists, a computer lab, art, our STEM program. So even in a more affluent area like Mount Pleasant or Sullivan's Island, our schools still have needs. And then if you extrapolate that and you look across the river in North Charleston, you'll see that we have Title I schools that have very intense needs. So I really think that if you look at our state as a whole, there's clearly a haves and a have-not scenario, and there's needs in public education in both of those types of communities. So I really think that we need to step up and improve all of our schools statewide.
And let me talk about that underfunded system that you referred to earlier. What exactly else needs to be in that system?
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of things that we can do. One thing is that we have a tremendous shortage of teachers in our state, and it's been exacerbated by COVID-19. I mean, gosh, we are losing somewhere around 8% of our teachers each year, and we started with thousands of vacancies after this past school year. So I think number one is we need to raise teacher pay. We also need to encourage people to go into the profession, and I think we can do that by expanding our Palmetto Life scholarships to cover college students who are pursuing an education major. And then thirdly, with respect to the teacher shortage, I think that we should encourage teachers to go to some of our underserved schools, our Title I schools, and I think that we can do that through student loan forgiveness. Fully fund our education system. We need to show teachers that we respect them, that we're paying them what they're worth. We need to move away from some of the high stakes standardized testing that really dictates a large share of our curriculum. I think we would be better served by incorporating some more vocational and career training, particularly in our high school. So that way, no matter what, they're prepared for it. Whether they're going to college, they have the basic knowledge and critical thinking skills to be successful there. Or if they're going straight into the workforce, they have real marketable career skills. And they can secure a job to support their family. So that's where I would start with education. Bottom line is it comes down to money, though, and South Carolina is not putting the resources it needs into fully funding our education and guaranteeing every child a quality 21st century education.
And what else would you replace the standardized tests with?
I think that we do have to have some degree of testing so that we can measure progress. Just as a parent of two elementary students, though, I see just how much testing there is, and it's pretty frequently throughout the year, and it's really stressful for students and teachers. And like I said before, we are really teaching to those tests. Sadly, I think that we would be better served giving our students the critical thinking skills to be successful. I think that if you're just cramming as much information into somebody's head so they're passing a standardized test, that is not an ideal form of education. And I really don't think that sets up our children very well for the future.
And where exactly are the teacher shortages in District 112?
They're throughout the entire state. So I couldn't tell you specifically about my state house district. I know that we do have some vacancies here, but I'm referring to statewide. If you talk to teachers groups, they will tell you that we're losing somewhere around 8% of our teachers a year. Some districts, if you look at it, it's as high as 30%. So it's really an acute need. And then especially right now with the COVID pandemic, that has caused some teachers to leave the profession just because they are afraid of being exposed to the COVID virus, or maybe they have an underlying condition that puts them particularly at risk. So that has exacerbated the problem this year.
And you talk about COVID. With the COVID situation affecting the local economy so badly, how has it affected sales tax revenues that the district needs to fund projects?
It's really affected us greatly. First, I'd like to talk about the human cost before we move on to the economic cost. Today, as we are filming this, South Carolina has lost about 3,500 people, sadly, from the COVID pandemic, and we have more than 210,000 deaths nationwide. So there's definitely a human cost that is very tragic. And there's also an economic cost, like you said. I think we're still waiting for some of those financial implications to become apparent. I could tell you at the state level, the thought is that the majority of our surplus that we generate in tax revenues each year is probably gone. Here locally, I think it's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. I think that, tourism-wise, we still did pretty well this past summer. But I think that you're seeing a lot of small businesses in the hospitality industry that are really suffering. If you think about a restaurant or another sort of hospitality business, those folks are typically they're small businesses run by families here in our district or here in the Charleston community, and they have razor thin margins during the best of times. A restaurant in particular, does not make a ton of money off of each meal that they serve, so they really have to have a significant volume to be successful. And I think that right now our hospitality businesses are really struggling. Even though we did have tourists coming to town, there wasn't as much eating out or going to bars or restaurants. And so I think that is going to impact their bottom line. And I just ask you to think, if you picture a business, it's hard to picture a business surviving off of only about half of its customer base. I think sadly that's what a lot of our restaurants are facing right now.
And what is your comprehensive plan to help these small businesses and restaurants?
Yeah, so I think that we need to do a few things. One is we need to get a handle on the pandemic, and the only way that we do that is through widespread testing that is accurate and has a quick turnaround time. I think that we do it through contact tracing, figuring out who has the virus, who has they exposed that virus to, and really quarantining people. The bottom line is that it's going to be sort of like whack-a-mole until we have a consistent set of standards here in South Carolina. We need a consistent set of rules so people know where and when to wear masks, so people know to social distance. And right now, what we're doing is we're sadly delegating that authority to letting them set public health policy that should be set at the state level. So that's the first part of my answer, is that until we get this virus under control, it's going to be bad for business. The second thing is we need to directly help businesses and workers get through this pandemic. I think that we need to look at tax deferments, no penalty tax deferments for businesses in particular, so that they can invest their money in staying open rather than sending a check to Colombia. I think on the worker side of the equation, we need to expand Medicaid. We have hundreds of thousands of people in this state who aren't covered by health insurance. And my gosh, we're in the middle of a pandemic. This is the time where people need access to high quality care that's not going to bankrupt them. So I really think that we can help our state's workers by expanding Medicaid. I think we can help our state's businesses by doing tax deferments and also looking at other regulations that are preventing them from innovating to meet customers where they are today.
That tax deferment, how long should that be?
I think that it should start out at up to a year. That seems to be what the experts are saying about this pandemic, is that it may be about a 2-year event. So I for up to a year.
And you obviously talk about those other regulations. Which one of those regulations are ideal right now?
In my district, one of the hot ones is the ability to sell alcohol to go, or to deliver alcohol direct to consumer. A lot of restaurants make the majority of their money off of alcohol sales. And right now, South Carolina has very archaic regulations that don't prevent our restaurants from, selling a meal with a packaged drink to go, or delivering that to somebody's house. Here's how absurd our state's liquor laws are. If you're familiar with Edmund's Oast restaurant, they have a restaurant, and then they have the brew pub downtown Charleston, in the Neck area. Those places are maybe, I don't know, a mile apart, something like that. So at each of those places, they brew beer. But in order for them they can't just directly transfer the beer to the other location. It has to go through a distributor, who then takes the beer to the other location, and then they buy it from the distributor. Right. I mean, how absurd is that? It's essentially one business that is prevented from shifting its product from one location to the other, just because of our state's archaic alcohol laws. So that would be one instance of an area where I think that we can have a change that would make a significant economic impact. There's also a number of other areas. I think that right now we really need to allow our businesses to operate outside to the extent possible, and that may require relaxing some parking regulations, or allowing them to move into public right-of-ways.
And you obviously, you talk about these businesses, small businesses, restaurants. I know over here on King Street, 1 block away from where I am right now, at least 50 businesses have closed. How many businesses, because I know you've been out campaigning a lot, how many small businesses and restaurants have closed in District 112?
There have been some that have closed. I think that we are at risk of really losing a significant percentage. With the business owners that I've been speaking to, a lot of them were the recipients of the federal PPP money this past spring. And that certainly extended their runway, gave them a little more room to maneuver and to stay open through these turbulent times. But they say they're coming to the end of the road. If we can't do something to either directly help them through some sort of PPP Part 2, or bringing back more business into their establishments, they're not going to be able to survive. My biggest fear is that when we come through this pandemic, that we will have lost a lot of our small family businesses, and the ones that remain are just going to be the big chain stores or the big chain restaurants that have more resources than a mom and pop outfit does. So, I think that we have the potential of losing about half of our small businesses here if we're not careful.
What exactly is the quality of life in your district?
The quality of life of my district is very good. I mean, we've got beautiful beaches, we have marshes, great restaurants. It's a great place to live. Of course, we do have a lot of struggles here as well, particularly on the environmental front. We have the Sullivan's Island Maritime Forest, which is threatened and may be cut if we don't take action. We have plastic nurdles, which are these little tiny pellets that are used in the plastics production process that are washing up on our beaches. We have the threats of climate change and offshore oil exploration. So we are really on the front lines of environmental challenges, but also we've gone through a period of intense explosive growth here. So we have a lot of infrastructure needs as well. We have a lot of outdated roadways that we need to address. It seems like we're constantly playing catch up rather than being proactive on our infrastructure over here. So we really need to push for smart, coordinated growth that isn't as rapid as the growth that we've gone through in the past, so that we know that we have the right roads, the right flood protection, and enough school capacity to handle our growth here.
You talked about a whole lot of those things, and I'm going to get back to it in just a second.
Okay.
But how can you ensure growth with smart growth?
So I think a lot of the problem here is a conflict between the town and the county, and it seems to be a lack of communication. So I think that we can push for smart growth by getting both of those entities in the same room and make sure that we have a comprehensive plan that's supported by both of those parties. Because if you think about it, Mount Pleasant is a pretty big area, but within that, there's pockets that are not part of the town.
Right.
And so it seems like a lot of the source of the conflict is the town and the county not being able to come to terms about what sort of growth is appropriate for our area. And so I think that starts with getting people in the same room and getting buy-in on the same plan. And that's really where I see a lot of my role as our next state legislator, our next state representative, as being a facilitator, getting people in the room, getting buy-in so that we're all operating off of the same page. And I think that will go a long way towards smart, coordinated growth.
You talked about the comprehensive plans that the towns and the government should have. Where's yours?
Well, I'm running for office, so my comprehensive plan is essentially what I've been saying this entire time, is that it's time for new, fresh leadership here. We need a strong advocate for our coast because we have a lot of challenges. We need somebody who has children in our schools, so knows the needs of our teachers, our students, and our working families, and we need somebody like myself who is energetic and accessible. So I think that you'll have plenty of time to see a more comprehensive plans coming from me. But right now I'm really focused on letting people know what I stand for and who I am and why they should choose me to be their next state representative.
Let me ask you this. How much tax revenue has District 112 lost over the past 2 years?
I couldn't answer that off the top of my head. I will say that our tourism was not bad this year. We had a lot of folks here in the summertime. We did take a big hit in the spring when we first shut down, which unfortunately coincided with spring break. But summer was strong. We're concerned about fall. Fall is kind of a shoulder season here where we would get, maybe older individuals who would come for a long weekend and play some golf and we're just not sure the extent to which we'll have tourism this fall. In terms of a hard figure for how much tax revenue we've lost, I think it's too early for us to know that. Typically, tax money is a little bit delayed from sort of the real-time economy. It takes time for it to filter back to our government. So I think we'll be in a much better position to answer that question a little bit later this fall when we're able to see the tax revenues that are coming in.
But not for this year. Let's forget about this year. What was the tax revenue for the past 2 years?
The past 2 years? Oh, we have certainly grown in tax revenue the past 2
How much
years.
have we lost?
Yeah. So no, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. No, we have been on the upswing in terms of tax revenues here in my district. With the caveat that I can't tell you, I'm not sure how things are going to shake out during this pandemic. Tourism here in South Carolina is a $24 billion industry. It supports 1 in every 10 jobs in the state. And Charleston alone generated about $10 billion of that tourism economic impact. And the tax result of tourism in our state's $1.8 billion with a B, $1.8 billion, with a lot of that coming from the Charleston area. And an even greater share, if you just look at the coast of South Carolina, my gosh, that is our bread and butter in terms of tax revenues. So I say this to let you know that we have a real opportunity here, I believe, to send a strong advocate for our coast to Columbia. We are clearly an economic engine for the state, and we need to be treated as such. So we have some real needs here in terms of our infrastructure, and we need the state to step up and be a good partner, and that's why I'm in this race. I want to let everybody know how important our coast is, how important Charleston is to our economy, and get some real buy-in to help us address some of these challenges.
Where would the real buy-in come from?
The real buy-in needs to come from Columbia. We have an outdated road system here in my district. We need some help with that. We have some real threats with coastal flooding in the whole Charleston area. To be frank, it used to flood just a handful of times each year, and now we're up to 90 times a year that we're experiencing flooding. So we have some really big infrastructure needs that we are not going to be able to tackle all alone. So we are going to need to point out to the state just how important we are to the economy, and have them invest in our area so that we can continue to be the economic engine for the entire state.
And with COVID, how should the state fund all of these planned projects with diminished revenues?
Yeah, that's going to be the tough one. It's obviously going to be an issue where we need to prioritize where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. I think that we need to start with education, because if we are not educating our children and setting them up for success, they're actually going to be a net drain on society, and we're going to end up having to spend more money on them after their school age. It costs a lot of money to house somebody in a prison, or to subsidize their life with either food stamps or some sort of direct assistance. So I think that we are really going to save money by investing in people early in their lives. I'd rather, spend a little bit more money on the first 13 years of somebody's life versus paying for them for the following 50 years of their life. So I think that we need to take a hard look at what our needs are and to really prioritize it. And I put education at the top of that bin, and I would also put infrastructure to help with transportation and flooding also at the top of that list. But you're right, we have some very hard choices coming, because this pandemic is clearly going to affect our revenues, and so now more than ever, I think we need fresh, strong leadership that isn't beholden to special interests, that is going to really prioritize what's going to have a direct, meaningful impact on people's lives.
And what's exactly that net drain right now?
We are towards the bottom of the list on education. We incarcerate a lot of people in our state, and that's expensive. I think that the reality is that we are not setting up the majority of our state students for success. And if a child is not able to get the education that they need, they have very slim odds of becoming a productive member of our society. So, like I said, I really think that we invest on the front end in people and give them the skills that they need to be productive versus paying for the implications of a bad education, the effects of a bad education throughout the next 40 or 50 years of a person's life.
And you talk obviously about infrastructure. How many highways in 112 actually need infrastructure right now?
It's a lot. I would say infrastructure wise, 41 is clearly a area of focus for us. If you look at the Cainhoy Peninsula, which is just outside of my district, but will directly affect my district, we have 12,000 homes that are approved but not yet built. So we have many, many, many more people moving to our area, and an old rural highway is not going to cut it. I think that we also have some infrastructure needs on Isle of Palms and Sullivan's. There's been a lot of stress this past summer related to beach parking and parking in the rights of way along Palm Boulevard. I think there are some things that our state can help us with there, perhaps improving those right of ways so we're not parking in people's essentially grass or landscaping. And I think that just beyond that, our state suffers from a lack of vision about beach access. We should have been in front of this, preserving land for a state park or beach parking. But instead, our leaders, did not have that vision. So we're unfortunately to the position where we need to play catch up. And so I think that the state needs to take a hard look at investing in access to our beaches, which has clearly reached a tipping point this summer.
How do you play catch up and still have a vision for this?
Yeah, so I think that our vision needs to be that our beaches are accessible to everybody, no matter what, and we're going to try to maintain free beach access. So I think that's the vision, and to get there, we're going to have to play catch up, and that's going to be, either coming up with an innovative way to get people to the islands, like a park and ride trolley bus system might help with that. Maybe we need to acquire land on the island to put in additional parking. Maybe we need to acquire land to put in an additional beach park. There's lots of different options, but all of those are going to be big ticket items that we really need buy-in, not only from the state, but also from the three municipalities that make up my district, which would be Isle of Palms, Sullivan's Island, and Mount Pleasant.
Where exactly is the available land on the Isle of Palms?
There is none right now. That's the problem. If we had the foresight, we could have planned for this, but we didn't. So now we're going to be in the position of just keeping an eye on things as they come onto the market. See if we can catch something that's going to be of value to the state.
What's the market and what's the value now?
Yeah, it's expensive now. Too long. The time probably been 20 years ago when land was much more affordable. I couldn't tell you. It just kind of depends on what comes up on the market but physical land for parking aside, there are some real things that we can do to the rights of way. There are things that we can do to the roadways to make them better for all of the beach traffic. And I think there is an opportunity to bring mass transportation back to the island. It used to be that you could take a trolley to Sullivan's and Isle of Palms and spend a day at the beach and then jump on the trolley and go back. I'm not proposing that we put in rails again and go back to that, but there may be an opportunity to do more of a park and ride situation with a trolley bus that would, pick you up. You could throw all your sandy gear in there and it would take you where you need to go. So that might be a solution. But the bottom line is I believe in beach access. I believe in free parking for the beach, and we really need to we need the state to step up and be a partner in this whole endeavor. I recognize that our beach communities are stressed, and there's a lot of burden that goes into maintaining the beach and the areas around the beach. So I think there's some things that we can do to help them. One thing that's on that list is the relaxation of the accommodation tax standards. I think there's some appetite, particularly on Isle of Palms, to utilize some of that money to help take on these big challenges that they face. So I'd like to work with them there, and I'd like to help them bring in some state resources so that we can make sure that they're not being crushed by tourists, and to make sure that tourists still have access to the beach.
And what state resources are you talking?
You know, I think we've covered it a bit. I think the state needs to be a partner in our mass transit to the beach. I think that the state could be a partner in improving the roadways and the rights of ways, particularly on Isle of Palms. Palm Boulevard is a state road. It is woefully out of date for the amount of traffic and people that it handles. So I think there's a real opportunity for the state to step in and make a significant investment along Palm Boulevard in particular.
Well, let me ask it a different way. Where's your confidence in the Department of Transportation?
I have great confidence in the Department of Transportation. I think that where we are failed sometimes is more at the legislative leadership aspect, where we're setting our priorities. You know, you see those articles about the State Transportation Board prioritizing projects, to expand roadways, where you can have somebody laying across the asphalt during the middle of the day and there's not a car to be seen. So I think it's not the rank and file Department of Transportation folks that's the problem. The problem is the lack of vision at the state level, and it's the lack of investment in the specific projects that are most needed. And I really think that my district has some of the most needed infrastructure improvements in the entire state, given how important we are to the state economically.
Well, let me ask you this. How much money would you request for the Department of Transportation for these projects?
You know, I would have to leave that up to the experts. I would hate to put a figure on it without having a hard number. So I would defer to the experts on the islands who probably have a better handle on what it would take to make those improvements. But it'll be significant. I'll tell you that. These projects are not cheap. And so it's really going to probably come down to a situation where the state would invest some money, and then the municipalities and county would have to make up the balance of it.
Have you been able to talk to the experts?
I've been talking to a lot of elected officials throughout really all four. I've got the three municipalities, Mount Pleasant, Sullivan's, Isle of Palms, as well as Charleston County. And I have been talking to officials in all four of those places. I don't think we're at the point where I could throw out a number of it's going to take X number of dollars to solve this problem. But those conversations are beginning, and I think that we have a real opportunity to make the state a better partner for us locally.
Daniel Brownstein, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you very much, Quintin. I really appreciate everything that you do, and I'm glad to see that you're on the mend. You're looking good, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.